Fifth question is going to be somewhat assessed in the group report itself, the written report itself. And the question there is what they say broadly correct? So this is where we're looking for what you should try to avoid in this section is making obvious mistakes with statements that you're making. So it's things that are in your report, it's linked to things that are in your report. So it's saying things, for instance, that the athlete's vitamin C intake is massively over the recommendations. The side effects you can get from that are kidney stones, where when I actually look at the data that you've produced in your group report, I see that the vitamin intake is only 10 milligrams above the recommended amount. It's only a very small difference. So when you say something that's clearly incorrect, for instance, if you are recommending supplements, I'd be very careful and wary about this, that you aren't just getting misled by advertisers or manufacturers' details. For instance, it could be that you recommend carbo loading for a sprinter or something like that. So it's information that's clearly incorrect. So this section, what I'm looking at is how correct is the information that you're given. There's going to be a bit of overlap. If you've got incorrect information in your group report, the written report for your section, there's a good chance you're going to feed back that incorrect information into your verbal report as well. So in both reports, make sure that the recommendations you're making are correct and are clear. The final question I'll be assessing in your verbal feedback is, have they made a significant contribution to the feedback? So this is an element of how have you contributed to the overall verbal report. If the previous people before you have given, for instance, 5 minutes, which is a decent amount of time on their topic, and you jump in with 1 minute, snatched 1 minute at the end, unless that's really good quality report, that leads me to believe that you haven't made the same contribution that the rest of the other group have made. Other ways I'll be looking at it is how much time have you spent on giving the report? How good is the information that you're giving back? Or is it just something you've just done the last minute, just ticking a box? So that's sort of an overall mark for that as well. It's looking at your overall contribution to the verbal presentation part of things. Does it look like you've just sort of rocked up a couple of minutes beforehand, you've read out what was in your handout and left it at that? Obviously you're going to get a poor mark for that. Similarly, if you come in and speak for a minute on the topic, that's obviously not going to get a very good mark. On the other hand, you need to be aware of the risk of speaking for too long. If you think about this, delivering to an athlete, all 4 sections together, you might be talking about maybe 20 minutes in total. If your section is 10 minutes, particularly if you're rambling on and you're reading directly from your report and it's very monotonous, then the person reading it, which is probably going to be me or Lisa, will be very conscious of you going over time. So try and get a decent limit, maybe 3 to 7 minutes as a sort of a rough guideline for how long each section should be. If your section is a minute, that's definitely too short. If it's over 10 minutes, that's definitely too long. So when I'm looking at the overall contribution, I'm looking at how long you've spent on doing it and how well prepared you look when you're doing the report. So for the overall sort of feedback, what you don't want to do, but which is very common because of nervousness, because of poor preparation and laziness, is to read directly in a monotone from your text. That will get a really poor mark. If I want to get that information, I'm just going to read your report. What the presentation is going to be is lifting out the important elements of the report in an engaging manner and an easy to understand manner for the athlete to pick up on the information. So overall, what you need to do is to prepare. Make sure you do a couple of practice goes, use some editing equipment if you want to, or software. I'll give you some advice on software you can use on Sunspace to edit the information. You can use anything from a camera phone to any high-end equipment we've got in the lab to video it, as long as it's easy to see and it's a decent quality. Very often your camera on your phone quality will be pretty poor, particularly with light. So make sure that it's reasonably well lit so the person watching the video can see you, and if you do have any diagrams that you point to, or any tables you might point to in your results section that isn't going to be seen if you use a camera. It's unlikely to be easy to see if you use the camera phone, unless it's quite a good quality. Think about your background. I've got a pretty bland background behind me here. It's a little bit busy. Maybe you could use a blank background, but these are fairly small issues. More important is that you get the information over concisely, clearly, and that the viewer can easily see what you're doing. You're talking about the main points. What you may want to do at the end is to briefly summarize what you've just said. One other thing that I should mention is you need to mention your name at the very start. So it's really important, because there's going to be 4 in a group. Mention at the start of your element, briefly just list what your name is, and that will help the reviewers and the markers and the external examiners when they come to look at the videos. Okay, so the last week of term after the Easter break, the practical sessions will be available to video some of your feedback. Don't forget that there's quite a few students in each group, so there may not be enough time. So the cameras are available for you to borrow to do the feedback as a group. Those 2-hour slot in the lab in the final week, I'll be around, or Lisa will be around, either in the labs or in our offices, to give out any further feedback you want on your reports. So if you brought in your video, you could give us a look at it and we could give you some feedback on that. Final reminder, the deadline is Friday, that last week of term. We're going to set up a computer here for you to install your videos. You can either provide it as a CD, burn it onto a CD, or you can provide it by storing it on the hard drive in the computers here. So you'll need a USB with the information on it, and the staff will put that on the computer for later marking. So best wishes with the report. Practice, 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 and you'll become more comfortable with playing with the camera and doing that type of thing. So best luck with the report. If you want any advice, just contact a relevant member of staff, such as myself or Lisa, if you want any guidance. If you need any guidance on using the video cameras as well, you can come to us or any of the technical staff, Tony, Rachel or Stuart, and they'll be more than happy to help you with that. But make sure that you don't leave it too late and have a snatched and hurried report. This is an opportunity to get quite a decent mark based on how well you present the data that's in your group report.